I'm 52 years old. I've spent most of my life doing what was expected of me. Being a wife, a mother, a good neighbor, and a loyal friend. I don't say that with resentment. There's a quiet kind of satisfaction in being reliable, in being someone others turn to. But somewhere along the way, I stopped asking myself what I wanted. I convinced myself that love, true love, was for the young. I told myself my story was mostly over. And then, one gray afternoon, my cousin's son knocked on my door. I never imagined something like this would happen to me. Please, don't make the mistake I did of thinking it never could. It had been drizzling since morning, the kind of slow, steady rain that makes everything feel a little more still, a little more hollow. I was tucked into the corner of my couch, wrapped in my favorite old sweater, sipping a cup of chamomile tea, when I heard the knock. Not the bell, just a soft, uncertain knock. I hadn't expected anyone. In fact, I'd gone out of my way to avoid plans. Rain always made me want to retreat inside myself, like drawing in for warmth. I peeled the blanket back, slid into my slippers, and opened the front door just a sliver. There he was, Evan. I hadn't seen him in over a year. Last I'd heard, he was off at university studying something design-related. I mostly remembered him from childhood barbecues and quiet summer evenings filled with awkward teen chatter. He was my cousin Melanie's son, so technically family, though we'd never really been close. But now he looked different, taller, slimmer. His jaw was more defined. His eyes, that soft, unreadable shade of hazel Melanie always said skipped generations, were more serious now. He was soaked, his hoodie barely keeping the rain off, and he gave me a lopsided smile. "Hey, Aunt Kira," he said, using the nickname he'd given me years ago when he was little. My car stalled a few blocks away. I was over at Jordan's, he lives nearby, and I remembered you were just around the corner. I blinked, surprised. "Oh, of course. Come in, I said, stepping aside. He stepped in, his shoes squeaking against the floor, leaving damp footprints on the mat. I shut the door behind him. The usual stillness in my home returned, but something about it felt warmer now, like the silence had shifted. "I'll grab you a towel," I said, already heading for the hallway closet. He chuckled. Didn't mean to drop in out of nowhere. Just didn't know who else to call. When I returned, he was standing in the living room, a little awkward, hands shoved into his damp pockets, glancing at my bookshelf like he needed a distraction. "Here," I said, offering the towel. Our fingers brushed briefly. Nothing dramatic, just warm skin against skin. But the feeling lingered longer than it should have. He dried off, ran the towel through his hair, and looked around. Same setup as I remember. Still cozy. Smiled. "I'm not big on change." "That makes two of us," he replied, grinning. I made him tea, the same chamomile I'd been drinking. We sat across from each other on the couch, him still slightly damp, me wrapped up like a cocoon. It should have been strange. But it wasn't. He told me about university, about breaking up with his girlfriend, about feeling unsure of what came next. I listened the way I always had. But something in the way he looked at me felt different. It wasn't the way a boy looks at an older relative. There was a softness in his tone, but also a quiet kind of intrigue, like he saw something in me I hadn't seen in a very long time. "You always seemed like you had things figured out," he said. I laughed. "Then I must be a good actress." He tilted his head. "No, really. You're calm. My mom's always stressed out. You're different." I looked down at my tea. I had to learn calm. Life didn't exactly hand it to me. The rain continued tapping at the windows. For a while, the world felt like it had shrunk down to that one room. Just two people, a pot of tea, and 100 unspoken things between them. "I used to have the biggest crush on you," he said suddenly. I looked up. He was blushing, smiling but sheepish. "You probably didn't notice, but when I was like 13, every time we visited, I'd find excuses to talk to you. You were just different from the rest of the family. I felt something catch in my chest. Not because of the words, but because of how they made me feel, like I hadn't been invisible after all. Like someone had really seen me. Well, I said gently, I suppose I'm flattered. He looked at me then, really looked. And something passed between us. Not inappropriate. Not scandalous. But real. Deeply, undeniably real. He stood eventually. I should go, he said. But he didn't move. Neither did I. The silence stretched between us, soft and electric. When he finally stepped outside, the rain had lightened to a mist. He looked back at me before walking away. You're still beautiful, Kira, he said. I hope someone tells you that more often. Then he left. The door closed behind him, but the stillness didn't return the same. And neither did I. That night, sleep felt like something I couldn't quite reach. I kept replaying everything. The look in his eyes, the brush of fingers, the way he hesitated in the doorway. It wasn't guilt or confusion. It was something deeper. An ache that had quietly existed inside me for years, but now someone had touched it. The next morning the sky had cleared. I stood barefoot at the window, sipping coffee, watching the light spill through the leaves like hope. Then my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. Hey, it's Evan. I hope I didn't say anything too weird yesterday. I was nervous. Thanks for the tea. Would love to talk again sometime. I stared at the message longer than I should have. Then I typed back. You weren't weird. You were honest. That's rare these days. Coffee's always on. His reply came quickly. Maybe I'll take you up on that. He did. 3 days later he showed up again, this time with pastries and a confident smile. Something about having him there again felt right. He noticed little things. Asked about the piano. Commented on an old photo. Listen, I told him I used to play. That I hadn't in years. Why not, he asked. Got busy. Got old. You're not old, he said gently. You're just waiting. Waiting for what? To remember who you are. We sat on the porch in the sunlight. He asked the kind of questions no one else ever did. What makes you feel alive? When was the last time someone surprised you? And bit by bit I opened up. About the divorce. The silence. The years spent shrinking to fit into someone else's expectations. You're not tired, he said. You're waking up. When he left, he squeezed my hand. Later I sat at the piano. Fingers stiff. Notes unsure. But the sound came anyway, fragile, imperfect, real. And when I looked in the mirror that night, I didn't feel invisible. I felt like someone who had finally been seen. Not love, not yet. But something true. Something I wasn't afraid to feel. Evan came by more often. He remembered how I took my tea. Let himself in with a soft, it's me. We moved carefully, slowly. But every time our hands brushed, or our eyes lingered, something deepened. Then one evening he showed up looking worn out, like he'd been thinking too much. Can we talk? He asked. He sat on the couch, hands clasped. I don't want to hurt you, he said. I know this is complicated. The family connection, the age. What people might think. But I don't care how it looks. Care how it feels. And with you, it feels real. I reached for his hand. My voice shook. I spent so long waiting for the right moment, the right person. But life doesn't always follow the rules. He looked at me. So what do? We're honest. We go slow. We don't hide. But we don't pretend either. He nodded. And then he kissed me. Not desperate. Not fast. Just steady. Warm. When he pulled back, I rested my forehead against his. This isn't a mistake, I said. I know, he whispered. Later that night I stood under the stars and knew. This might not be what I ever expected. But it was mine. And maybe, finally, that was enough.